Right, so I'm going to say hello. I'm Audrey Kempson. I'm the programme tutor for the Mental Health Recovery and Social Inclusion Masters programme. So I'd like to say hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us. So we've got quite a list of people there today, which is always good to see. And we're going to show you, first of all, a short video of our last graduation.
I'm Joyce. I'm a CPN with the Home First team in Hitchin. I've been doing an online Masters in Recovery and Social Inclusion, and I finally completed it, and it's my graduation tomorrow.
Graduation day, yes. On a personal note, it means a huge achievement. I didn't actually study at degree level. So, as I say, studying Masters, yes, big achievement. And I guess I just really relied on 20 years' experience of working in mental health, together with determination, commitment, and I think above all a willingness to learn.
It broadened my horizon. It was a tremendous opportunity to see what's really going on in the world, and also to then, of course, see what, if it's happening out there, why isn't it happening where I am, and what can be changed in the ways that we deal with recovery and with mental health from the position and the place that I am in my life in Europe.
Graduation day is such a thrill. It's been so exciting to meet people, some people for the first time. It's seeing everybody achieve what they set out to do over the period that they set themselves to do it, and I know it's not been easy for some of you.
What I'd like to say is thank you to all the students of what they've added to the course, to see the achievements that are going to be at graduation tomorrow, and also to thank all the people who supported the students as well, because I know that's been a real feature in terms of when you're doing a course like this, what that means. So all of those who've also supported the people who've done so well to go and get those fantastic awards and accolades tomorrow. Thank you.
Rambanpasi. Winner of a University Prize, Stephanie K. Ventling. Sarah Elizabeth Williams.
No pressure.
Right, so now I'm going to take you through some, after that little graduation video where there were 3 of the people that achieved their full Masters just in December. So that was a very exciting thing to see our first students through. So I'm going to take you through a little bit about the course. Sorry, we're just at the end of them rather than the beginning, so I'm going to take you back through. So the first one is to explain a little bit about the University of Hertfordshire. I'm not going to go through this in too much detail. So we're in Hatfield, but obviously you'll be studying online, so that won't affect you so much unless you are local and you want to come and use the facilities, when of course you can. We're one of the largest providers of health and social work education, and we've got very strong links with the East of England, London, South of England and the East Midlands. We've also got very good reputation for research excellence, and our nursing research was ranked 6th highest out of 35 submissions. So we're very proud of that. The learning resources that you'll use when you're studying online are available through the learning platform that we call StudyNet. Some of you may be familiar with other platforms such as Moodle and Blackboard, but we use a particular version called StudyNet. The modules have fixed start and end dates, so there isn't any flexibility with that. You will start, you will study, you will submit assignments, and they'll be marked in the same way that you would do if you were attending in a classroom situation. Other than that, of course, your study can pretty much fit around your work and when you want to do it, so we find quite a lot of our students study at weekends and in evenings, of course. The commitment, I mean, it's a bit of a controversial thing to say 10 to 15 hours per week. I think some of our students would say it's more than that. Certainly the extra reading that you need to do to really excel is probably more than that. But of course that depends on the sort of level that you come in with as well of knowledge. The learning resources, we'll show you some of these in a moment, but there's a module portal where there's module information, there's module news. Your module leader can email you all through that module portal. There are discussion forums that you can use that all the students will contribute to. You submit your assignments online and they get uploaded, and we practice those very early in the induction modules. And you can access all the materials that we recommend to you are all available through the University of Hertfordshire Library. So there are e-books and journals that you can access through that online. This is just how one of the front of the module page it looks like. So you'll see there's an introductory blurb in the middle about the module, and then the menu down the side is where you go to for the different parts, the different information you want to access. So down the side there is an assignment tab that's where you'd upload your assignment. The module information is where you'll access all the learning resources. This is how the learning units will look. So you'll see that there's a module overview for this module, which is the first one, the Innovation in Recovery and Social Inclusion Theory and Practice. And then there are learning units below that. Those learning units will take about 8 to 10 hours worth of effort. And so they're divided up into activities and reading for you to undertake. This is another example of some of the learning units. So this is Unit 1, and it's the second learning unit within Learning Unit 1.2. And you'll see this is one of the learning resources that we use. This is how the discussion forums look like. So there you can see that there's a header at the top, and then people respond to that. And this is one about stigma. There are 4 modules in the main part of the course, and then there's your dissertation or project module. So the 4 30-credit modules, the first one is Innovation in Mental Health Recovery Theory and Practice. The second one is Research in Mental Health Recovery Practice. The third one, actually those are the wrong way around, it's Legislation and Policy, Mental Health Recovery and Social Inclusion. And then there's the Leadership and Collaborative Practice for Innovation. In Year 1 there are 2 assignments for each module, assessment, and in Year 2 there is just 1 larger assignment for each module. The dissertation module runs alongside the modules in Year 2, and that's where you develop your research proposal and ideas for a project, making it an innovation in practice. People often ask, where will this take me? Why is it useful? And this was a quote from our one of the local managers in the trust locally, where she said, "High quality mental health services with an emphasis of recovery is the first of 25 priorities in the Department of Health guidance, closing the gap." And it's very clear from all the policy that's emergent from that the central role of recovery in mental health practice. Another commonly asked question is, where do I go from there? Clearly, if people are in a profession already, Masters equips you to progress up the career ladder. But more than that, we hope that this course really helps you to think about how you can make changes, how you can innovate in practice in your own small way within your sphere to make changes that will make a difference to people's lives. Of course, having a master's will equip you more with more academic and research skills, and so that could also be an option to think about moving into research or teaching. And for those of you who are service users and carers, and we welcome a lot of those people on the course, the successful completion of the course could open the possibility of considering career in mental health. And I think we would all view that as an expanding area of development these days, with the emphasis that there is on co-production and the how important it is that service users are involved in every part of service design and delivery. The support that's available, well, there's me. I'm the programme tutor, and so I have a sort of overview of all the course, all of the modules, and I'm the person that you'd come to if you were struggling, if you need an extension, if things have got very difficult for you at home, and you can share those things with me, and I can give you advice about how to progress through the course, staying within the boundaries of what we can do and what we can't do. It's very useful to keep very clear about what's possible. So I'm the programme tutor. There's an induction programme which we suggest that you start to undertake 2 weeks before the course starts, so you're ready to run in week 1. There's a student handbook, there are disability advisors and careers and placement services, and another question that people ask is how do I access those if they're online? And we've spoken to all of these services who are keen to be able to provide those services for our online provision. And if you experience difficulties with that, then that's something I would be able to take up for you. Each module has a module tutor, and you'll be seeing a couple of those later. I run a module as well with one of our tutors who isn't here at the moment. You'll be allocated a project supervisor, a primary supervisor during your when you're undertaking your project module. There's also the peer support, and we do encourage people to step outside of the StudyNet structure to support each other via email or WhatsApp groups or whatever way it is that you'd like to establish connections with people. The learning resources, we're very proud of the learning resources we have here, and they are very accessible. And again, we try to make that as easy as possible so that any article that is referenced by us within the course will be a click away for you. You should be able to click into the university system and be able to access it very quickly. There's also administrators, and we were trying to decide earlier what a group of educational technologists is called, whether it's a flock or a gaggle or a conclave, I'm not quite sure, but there's a lot of them here today all supporting us, and they do that all the time. We have terrific educational technologist support. What you'll be working towards, well, graduation at the end of it is obviously the key, but we really hope the process will be just as exciting as the outcome, and you'll get an MSc in mental health recovery and social inclusion. But there's all sorts of stops along the way for that, so you can study one module if you would like. You can do a PG Cert, which is 2 modules. You could do the Diploma in Higher Education, which is 4 modules, or the full MSc with the dissertation at the end. And people choose what suits them, and we're happy for that. Although we love it when you do the full MSc, of course. These are some quotes from our current students. Nothing speaks more loudly or strongly than those, and we're fortunate enough to have some students who have been very keen to contribute to getting the word out there with the course. So these are a few that I'll let you have a look at. One that I'm very pleased about is the one on the bottom right there, which is that the relationships that have developed online and via Skype have been priceless. And I think that is something that if you're prepared to put the work in to email people, to Skype, to join in tutorials, there is a whole other layer of richness that you can get from the learning that we provide. So I really would recommend, if you're thinking about that you put as much into that as you can. The cost, this is the cost for the forthcoming academic year, so £1,240 per 30 credits. So 30 credits is one of our modules. So the total cost is £7,440. We've got lots of flexible payment plans now, and I know that makes a real difference to people thinking about studying at master's level. You can pay fees by semester in advance, monthly instalments can be arranged. You can apply just to do the one module at a time and see how you go. to see whether you like that way of working, whether it suits you, whether it's at the level that you'd expect. So all of those things can be tried out. This year we're very lucky to have a scholarship. Our department offered to pay for one scholarship for a service user or a person with lived experience of mental distress. And so this year we're inviting applications for that scholarship. They have to be in by July, and we'll make the selection by the end of July. And there are criteria. But obviously you have to apply for a place on the course first, and you have to get one of those. So the way to do it is to apply online, and then the scholarship criteria is sent to you, and you make that application to me, and then we judge it. Not looking forward to that bit. This is what's included in your fees: tuition, project supervision, all the assessments, the online learning resources whilst you're a student, and all the books and e-books and software. Entry requirements. As with most masters, a good first degree or the equivalent, as well as having some involvement in mental health services delivery, are the two things that we ask for you. However, we do recognise that service users and carers who have been involved and have experience of people with mental distress have sometimes been diverted from the usual educational trajectory. And so we do consider those applications from people who have had that experience carefully. And we usually would ask, if you haven't got the first degree, for you to do an exercise just so that you can be sure that you're working at the right sort of level, and that we can be sure that we're not taking you on without you being able to manage to complete. And there is, of course, as you'll be studying English, there's a requirement to have a level of English as well. How to apply? You can go to the online courses and apply online. The application form, plus photocopies of your exam certificates, the front page of your passport, and your references. If you can supply all of those as in that first application, it can be dealt with more speedily. Coming back to you to say we need a reference, obviously all of that takes time. And if you are applying for the scholarship, I would recommend that you do that early, so that you can be sure that the application is in plenty of time. So, any questions? I see there's some questions written up. Should I take them from there? Is that the idea? Or have you got a list? Okay.
And it's a nice comment from Donna about the cost is half as in the US.
Yeah. So, Celine, yes, the presentation will be available online afterwards, and I understand that you've got to go at 5:50, but yes, all of the parts of the presentation will be available. Sorry, that was Joanne, actually. I've had some other questions as well. Yes, I see, Donna, you're saying that for students in North America, the cost is about half of what you pay. That's interesting. I didn't know that. What do I consider a good first degree? I suppose ideally an upper second class, a 2-1. We do consider people with 2-2 as well. Can you apply in July for a January start? Natalie, no, you can't. Currently, we only start the course in September. So you'd have to, if you wanted to start next year, you'd have to wait until next September. How many students would be an intake? Oh, well, Turia, we hope to have a lot more than we've ever had before. Although we did have 60 in the first intake, we probably wouldn't quite want that many. I think we might struggle a bit. But we don't have an upper limit. And so, but last year we had 18 people apply and get places for the course. Somebody asked about aspirations. My aspiration is to become a strategic director in the NHS. Yes, this would be an appropriate preparation for somebody who was interested in developing strategic mental health services, definitely. Who are the tutors? Well, I'm one of them, and you'll see a couple of them later. We've got Professors Ramon and Littlechild here with us who are going to present. They both run modules on their own, and they also run a module together, the project dissertation module. And the other module leader is Dr. Jane Shears, who runs leadership and collaborative practice. She couldn't be here today. but she's a social worker and works for us in her spare time, and she's very much involved with practice. Oh, can we give some examples of current past students' research projects? Oh, Brian Ashula, probably you're best for this. We've had some. Yeah, would you like to answer?
Yes, of course. One of them who is present here is doing her project on how to tackle issues of domestic violence and mental health among first people, women in Canada. This is an issue across the world, not only in Canada, but this is a particular uptake on this issue. Another example, Stephanie, who is also, I can see she's there, has done her project on the views of people who use services who already were on a first course before, and asking them to analyze the data from a research on stigma and recovery in Switzerland. This is a fairly original idea, and like the other idea that I've mentioned before. Another project is about mental health of students. Somebody is planning this project right now, and the idea is to look at how we can assist students by, first of all, encouraging their participation in telling us what they want to get from mental health support services. In all of the projects, we are asking for participation of service users, hopefully also of carers and of professionals. Enough for now?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Do you want to add anything?
I think a couple of other, just to mention from amongst those that are happening, some of the ones are in terms of dementia, in terms of dementia care, how we apply issues and values of mental health recovery in those services. I've had two candidates who've been doing that. Got someone who's doing some work on development of peer support work in services. So the whole thing about co-production, I think, is a main feature of that. It's not only, it's looking at how you produce change in your organisation, be you a professional or an expert by experience, about your contribution to the development of those areas, which I think is the interesting bit for the project. And a recent one is actually in co-production of care plans, how that can take place within the values and skills and methods, if you like, within their own agency.
I see Natalie feels that we've answered that well, so that's good. I said there was no flexibility with the start dates of modules. If we enrolled on a module-to-module basis and needed to miss one for personal financial reasons, how easy would it be to return to the course? Quite easy. You can rest for up to a year, so you can step off at the end of a module and then wait and choose. I mean, if you felt that it was going to be too much to do in 2 years, we can discuss that with you at the beginning and make a plan for that. So there's no need to put yourself under great pressure. And I think we do listen well. You would expect that, wouldn't you? But it's not always the case. But we do listen closely to our students and try to support and help wherever we can, because we recognise that you're a special group that needs special support sometimes. And so I would say we're good at that. I'd hope we're good at that. Hi Stephanie, I see you are there. That's nice to see your face. It's always nice to see friendly faces there, and I see Stephanie's here as well as Donna. That's really nice. There was somebody who said a little bit more about the criteria for those with lived experience. The criteria is that, well, I've got it here in front of me, so just to remind myself, we ask you what the differences are that you've already made to mental health services or people experiencing mental health, mental distress. But what would the getting the MSc in mental health recovery and social inclusion mean to you, what you hope for your future with the MSc. We ask you to demonstrate your stickability, you know, your determination to complete, because if there's anything about higher level post-graduation study, and we've all done a fair bit of it in this room, is that you just have to be very determined to get through it and to embrace it, really. And so we ask you for some evidence from your own experience of that. A little bit about the personal and financial challenges that you've experienced because of your particular lived experience difficulties in terms of your education and your career. And clearly we have to ask something about employment and salary, because it is meant for somebody who, the scholarship is meant to go to somebody who really needs it, who can't get a sponsorship from work or support in any other way. I hope that answers that. Anything else that people have asked? Oh, somebody said, can I start the MSc and change to PG Cert or PG Dip if you want to? I think if you were thinking that you weren't sure whether you do the full MSc, we'd probably encourage you to do a module, register for the PG Cert, and then decide to carry on as far as you felt that you wanted to. So rather than register for the whole thing and try to rearrange it, it'd be better to go the other way round. Another person has asked, I'd like to know if we're going to be able to use the university resources to find a working placement or to seek for a job. All of the university resources will be available for you, but of course there is a slight limit if you're not local and can't access them face to face. But we would hope that that you can try and that the services in the university would try and support you as an online student, and we are getting better at that. I don't think we're perfect at it yet, but we're trying hard. So yes, there's no reason why you shouldn't use any of the resources. And we had TEDx here the year before last, and we had one of our Australian students applied, got through the first round, and then came and delivered the TEDx lecture in Hertfordshire. So these sorts of opportunities are definitely available. Joanne, oh good, you're saying that answers my question brilliantly. You certainly will apply. Hooray, we're doing a good job then. And Stephanie, say hi to Brian. She likes your advice. So I think that's probably exhausted my bits of questions. I hope that has. Nobody else dying to ask anything. I'll call that a day and we'll move on. We're going to move on now to some videos of students who are talking about their assignments. And we'll post all of these videos onto the RAISE website, and we'll also use them in the StudyNet resources later. So they're short videos, about around 3 minutes each. And the first one's by Karen Machin about the legislation and policy module.
I've come from this course from lived experience of mental health problems. So I had a period off work, and then I got through volunteering and came to employment in mental health. And I've had some really great experiences of co-production and social leadership, which helped with my own recovery. But at the same time, I've also had some experiences of very tokenistic involvement, where I was treated as just a service user. I saw the advert for the MSc and thought, I'll apply for it. I went on to do the first 4 modules of it and got the postgraduate diploma. But at that point I realised that actually I wanted to do a PhD rather than just stick with a master's. And the tutors, they did encourage me to go for it, which is brilliant. And I've just registered now for a PhD. The MSc, or postgraduate diploma, it was great for me. It really suited what I wanted. So it was a fantastic opportunity. I accomplished what I set out to do, which was to establish that I do know this topic. But it's really sort of stretched my learning, and to also put it in a wider context from a range of experts with different interests, including internationally. This particular course is also good because the ethos of the course is very much about sharing expertise. It's open to a real range of views, so I felt valued and included in all that, so that was essential for me. And then the other part really was the practical side of it, because I really wanted to continue with my self-employment. It was important that it fit alongside that. So that flexibility of being able to learn online when it suited me was really important and worked very well for me. Some online learning tips, but specifically for the legislation and policy module. I really didn't think I would enjoy legislation and policy. I have to say it, it's not a topic that I ever thought that I would enjoy at all. It feels very distant to people with lived experience. It's something that other people decide, not us. I prefer something that's much more hands-on. But looking back, I think it was the most enjoyable module, and all credit to the tutors for enabling that. There was a lot to learn, so I think my tip would be that it's important to focus on what's of interest to you. So to decide what you want to write about and have the confidence to concentrate on that. And the tutors do encourage that. They do say, focus on something that really inspires you, that you want to find out more about. My top tip, I think, would definitely be to attend the tutorials. The Skype can feel really disjointed at times, and it can be such a nightmare. But I thought the tutorials themselves were really helpful. They kept me in touch with people, and they kept me on track with my progress. I definitely recommend doing that. And it's like any course, really. You only get out of something what you put in. It's a great opportunity. There's with some really inspiring tutors. So I just say, make the most of it, enjoy it, and good luck.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie K. Wentling, and I'm speaking to you presently from Zurich, Switzerland. I am a peer support specialist. I work in one of the leading clinics outside of Zurich. I also am coming from experienced involvement. I joined the e-learning course for mental health recovery and social inclusion in 2013 and graduated last year, and am also honored to have won the University Prize. I've been asked to talk to you about leadership as I see it for recovery, and I find it a brilliant theme and a most challenging subject. It really helped me break through the glass ceiling. Coming from personal experience as a service user, as well as someone who works as a peer support specialist in a leading clinic, there were quite a few challenges along the way for those of you that have tried to create some kind of change. You'll notice that structure is still old, thought patterns are still according to different linear ways of thinking. And of course we all know, just to name those two things, if we're talking about recovery, we're talking about non-linear paths. We're talking about very creative, very original, very individual journeys that we would like to go with people. And, that itself is actually a contradiction to how many of these clinics are led. And it's brought me into a place of continuous friction, also a place where it has definitely worn me down, trying to be the kind of person within a clinic that, of course, incorporates this kind of change, that carries existential and experiential knowledge, that carries also, because I am a master in mental health now, also a lot of scientific knowledge and expanded knowledge of how things go around the world. But in truth, it still is something that is very challenging to create a place where companies do not destabilize because change happens too fast. At the same time, you need companies with workers that are very informed in how we're going to change things. They have to revise their own attitudes. They have to revise their own approaches. And, the best thing that I came up with while looking at all the different options and all the things you can talk about and read about when it comes to leadership is something that I call transformational leadership. And my transformational leadership approach is something you can read up on. And what I'm trying to say is that if we navigate change in the face of challenges and conflicting interests, I found it best to just hold a vision for something that is greater than what we even know what the outcome will be right now. And this is my new attitude as I walk into meetings. This is my new attitude as I help people in recovery groups. I'm always there to hold the space for that which can emerge. I'm always there to hold the vision of something that is greater than those people that sit there in the room, that in their own afflictedness right now cannot even perceive that there might be a path for them This is perhaps an attitude of hope, but it is more than that. It's definitely assessing the space. It's definitely intentionally holding the responsibility and taking in a greater picture from the onset. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy reading what I've written about leadership for the future. Thank you.
I found it to be a really fantastic course so far. The first module is on innovations in mental health recovery, and it really does spark your thinking in terms of looking at how you work with your clients and how you think generally about people with a mental health diagnosis. For me personally, because I've experienced mental health problems, it's actually been personally very helpful as well, because it really looks at people's strengths and the strengths approach, and also looks at growth beyond adversity and things like resilience and how we can help better those people that maybe are at risk due to various social factors. So it also talks about self-management techniques like the Wellness Recovery Action Plan and employment initiatives. So it's very wide-ranging, so you can look more into the things that you are particularly interested in. So for me, in my role as a peer trainer for a mental health trust, I was particularly interested in RAP and also in peer support. Employment is something else that I'm very interested in. So I've mainly focused my assignments on those areas. In terms of the second module, which is on mental health recovery research, that's been really interesting in that it looks at participatory research, action research. So rather than traditional research, which was what I learned about in my first degree, it looks at the importance of including people with lived experience in research. So it should be something that they are involved in, or should I say we are involved in, and that people should actually gain something from it ideally. So whether that's empowerment through being involved or gaining skills, or ideally both. In terms of the course, it really does, it's very suitable for anyone who wants to challenge the stigma and discrimination that exists in society towards people with a mental health diagnosis, and who believe that actually there isn't such thing as madness and normal, but actually we could all put ourselves somewhere in between at various points in our lives. It particularly appealed to me, this course, because it's constructed by academics, professionals and people with lived experience. And to me, the future of mental health means involving people with lived experience in making the decisions about how the services should be run. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for the videos that people have made and the presentation so far. I hope you found it valuable. I certainly have. My name is Brian Littlechild, Professor here at the University, and I'm the Module Leader for Legislation and Policy and co-leader of the Project Module with Shula, who you heard from earlier. What I'd like to do is to go through some of the areas in relation to some of the work that we've been involved in terms of co-production and what that might mean in our sorts of areas. I think the issue isn't so much now about discussions about co-production. I think it's more about the level of co-production and how we look at that within the values of mental health recovery and the mental health services and our various involvements in that. And I think we'll come in a moment to the idea of a ladder of participation as a way of gauging that, which I have found useful in my work over the years to share with you. I think the other element of that is
how we work towards a 360-degree view of how we go about research, policy development, and practice as well. And I hope you have a couple of examples of that as we go through. Okay, hopefully everyone can see the slides. Okay, so a couple of examples. There will be the whole life evaluation that we did with one of our local mental health trusts several years ago, and we'll look at an area which sometimes people don't find very comfortable to talk about, but I think if we can move towards co-production in the areas of aggression and violence in mental health work, we are doing something pretty positive, and I hope to show that as well as we go through this presentation. Okay, so the first one to be thinking about is the whole life research. As I said, this was done jointly with a local mental health trust, and it was a program and a manual which was worked up with service users, people with lived experience within the trust and ourselves. It was implemented and then we reviewed how that had gone to change the program and develop it. And if people are interested, that's the reference. It's in an open access journal, so anyone can go onto it to see it without paying anything to the journal or publishers or anyone else. So the idea was, in terms of the evaluation, to look at the experiences and views of the participants several months after the completion of the program. And I think that's really important because it's the longer term effects and thoughts on it that we are thinking about from everyone's perspective. So we talked to the people who act as therapists, as they were called in this particular program, and the people with lived experience to talk about that, but not immediately after the program had finished, but some while afterwards, to see what had been embedded and what was useful in the longer term, not just the immediate effects and experiences of that. So the aims were to know whether the whole life program and the whole life manual were effective in terms of a qualitative study where it wasn't just us as academic researchers, it was through semi-structured in-depth interviews, allowing for the themes as we have found them as they're coming along. So it was, in terms of the research team, were people with lived experience, the people who worked as therapists, the people in the agency, and us as academics in the university. In that way, I think it was co-produced. I think where we could have done something differently, we didn't have carers involved. So we're always having to think about how can we improve on what we do and what we did to take matters forward with that idea of co-production to the fullest possible extent, which has not been the case in so many of our services in health and social work in any event, and particularly maybe in the areas of mental health for a number of reasons. So, in terms of the research team, sorry, we'll move to the next slide now. In terms of the research team, we worked closely together and supported each other. So the interviews, for example, were largely carried out by people with lived experience. The findings, the way we developed the themes, were co-produced in that way. So the findings that you'll find in the article were, I think, done in a way which really genuinely allowed a form of co-production in terms of research. Okay, second example is in terms of something that I've been involved in a number of years about issues of aggression and violence and how we can positively respond to some of the issues that we know occur in a number of settings, including mental health settings. And we know that can be distressing and difficult for everybody involved. And that includes patients, service users, people with lived experience, the workers involved. In fact, other people are involved in those services as well. So those areas of distress and difficulty, I think we have to look from that 360-degree perspective. What are the issues that might lead to these things happening? What is it in the environment in terms of maybe staff groups, in terms of agencies,
in terms of what we bring personally in various ways to a situation that can lead to conflict and difficulties. And indeed, how can we look at those and examine them in a safe environment to think about how we produce services which are less likely to produce that for everybody involved. And to do that, we have to start to think about co-production in this area. That's just the NICE guideline. If people don't know, National Institute for Health and Care Excellence is a government body which is set up to produce guidance which most trusts will go along with. It's not statutory, but it's kind of seen that way. And if there is an inspection, we have government agencies that inspect trusts and others, they will be looking to see if these guidelines have been implemented, and if not, why not? Because they come from a group of people who go along and come together to produce not only a systematic review of evidence, but also opinions from those involved, including, in this case, service users and carers, which hadn't been the case for the previous guideline, which had been 10 years previous. So just in itself, that was important. You could look at that and say, actually, do you know what? There was actually an overpreponderance of those who are professionals and academics, and there should have been more service users and carers within that group. That's something for us to be working on, I think, in these sorts of areas. Okay, so we know that relationships can be affected in relation to these sorts of areas. What we need to think about are extrinsic factors, such as the attitudes and behaviours of surrounding staff and maybe other service users, the physical setting, and any restrictions that limit the service user's freedom. And this has come from discussions within that guideline development group over 3 years. So actually the guideline came from discussions, disagreements sometimes, to come to a view of how we can look at this in terms of everyone being involved to have their say, not only in the development of policies, but also in terms of things, when things happen, how can we look at those positively to move things forward from everyone's perspective. So the guideline says we have to have positive engagement with people with lived experience as early on as possible and as best as possible. To do that, I think we need to have projective understanding of each other's viewpoints and what happens, and therefore this idea of 360 degrees of how we examine something. We know there are ways to develop safer environments for everybody, which is what we're looking for, and that's just a couple of references there. Professor Tim Kendall, who was the advisor to this from the Royal College of Psychiatrists, talked in the NICE guideline about wanting to develop a culture of learning such that service users and professionals together can review every time they restrain or restrict a person's freedom and give as much attention to human rights as we do to safety. And that will be a major step forward for people with mental health problems and in different settings in terms of mental health. There are discussions there about de-escalation, about how that can try and avoid issues and difficulties, about staff training, but also to encourage service users as part of safe procedures to think about what are the triggers for them, what can they discuss with the staff that will diminish the risk of that happening again for themselves and other people. Okay. The guideline makes clear that service users, carers have to be involved in decision making at all levels and as soon as possible in any of situations involved. To evaluate the physical and emotional impact on everyone, including witnesses, and try to see what we could do differently within those services. And it should be to try and avoid similar incidents happening in the future. One of the things that came through, which we were very pleased with, I think, was the recommendation there should be a service user-led monitoring unit. So when there are serious incidents that happen within a trust, and I'm working with this on our local mental health trust at the moment, of setting up a monitoring unit which will be led by service users to examine what happened, when and why, and make recommendations not only that particular incident, but also for policy development to make the services safer for service users and indeed carers and others involved, within the idea of a learning organisation to try and pick up issues, to try and work things forward in a positive manner. Just a way of looking at co-production, which I found useful, is Einstein's ladder. I need to change this at some point, but I think it's rather nice. It's a PDF and I've not been able to change it around. But basically the idea is
But agencies know we have to have co-production these days. It's not least of all, NHS England have put this in one of their reports very recently to make it an official thing within mental health services in the UK. But actually what can happen is that it's a tick box exercise, if I could say it, tick box exercise, so that the culture isn't correct. It can be said, we've had service users involved in this meeting. Well, the fact that people weren't prepared for it properly, the fact there were 30 other people in there who were very comfortable in those meetings and the terms being used and others weren't, could be called as manipulation, the bottom part of that. Then it can be decoration. Yes, we've got people with lived experience here, but they aren't really being allowed to contribute properly through to tokenism, to being consulted and informed, right up to the top of the ladder, where actually things are initiated by people with lived experience as equal partners. Okay. One of the things we're involved in at the moment is the Safer Systems approach, which comes from the Closing the Gap programme that you heard about earlier, funded by the Health Foundation, and that's due to report this summer in a number of areas with mental health trusts in East Anglia and some of the universities involved in East Anglia, in terms of how we produce care plans which take account a number of these areas in terms of that 360 degree that we were talking about. And I mentioned earlier that we are working with our local mental health trust to produce that service user monitoring unit, which hopefully will make big differences locally. And thank you very much for that.
Hello, I'm Shula Ramon. You've heard me before. I'm a professor at the University of Hertfordshire, and I certainly have the honor to be the person who initiated the idea of starting this course. To do the course, there was a need for a lot of many other people to be involved, and we have a number of people from overseas, like Professor Larry Davidson from Yale University and Professor Miguel Xavier from Portugal. We also had service users who were involved in preparing the teaching material for each of our modules. So this is where I come from, and I would like to talk today about an idea that may sound very simple, and this is learning from success in mental health recovery. We are all familiar with success in our everyday life. We are less used to learning from success. If you look at how we are taught in our primary and secondary schools and later in our professional development, we are mainly taught to learn from failure, to look at what we have not done well and how we can improve on it. In learning from success, we are putting it the other way around. We are not denying that there are failures from time to time, but we are looking at how, not only how we can reach success, but primarily what we can learn from any successful attempt that we have made. And this does have implications for service user, care providers, policymakers and politicians engaged in mental health recovery, or discovery as we start to call it. The principle of success is the belief that each of us has got abilities and not only disabilities. We have strengths and weaknesses, and this applies also to people who experience mental ill health. The other principle is to look for success. As I said, our training to look for failure quite often makes sure that we are not looking for success, even when success is there behind the corner. So we will see if there are examples where looking for success does help. Looking for success also means assessing people in terms of strengths rather than weaknesses and helping them to develop those potential strengths. The importance of others in success is may be obvious, but I will talk a bit more about it, and especially about the role of mentors in learning from success. What would it mean to learn from success? In the new meaning of recovery, with the focus on strengths, I think that success comes as a natural development. The same applies to social inclusion. And I would like to give a few examples. The RAP is a well-being recovery action plan, which is being developed initially by Ellen Copeland, a psychologist who has experienced depression for a long time. And this is literally a plan that everyone can learn to use and which is applied in the UK through peer support workers, how to plan your recovery. To plan one's recovery, you have to believe that recovery is possible. We talk about the journey of recovery, but even to enter the journey, you have to believe that this can be successful. We do know from everyday life that small successes lead people to be motivated to move to somewhat bigger successes. Peer support workers themselves are a huge example of success, because this is about how to harness what is an experience of suffering, of weakness at times, of being different from other people, to the support of other people with similar experiences, where the person who becomes a peer support worker is able to use those experiences of themselves in a way that enables the other person to enter the journey of recovery and succeed along the way. Parental mental health and child welfare is another example. We have here an interesting research where parents with mental health problems and their children were asked to define success in their life or experiences of success as they came across them, alongside asking the same question of adult mental health workers and those who are responsible for child protection. And I think to a great extent we were surprised that it was mainly the parents and the children who in many cases acted as young carers who were much more able to identify success than the professionals. The successes they identified, a lot of them were small successes, but very significant within their lives, like the good times they had together. The children, who, as I said, were young carers, were able to say what have they learned that they would have learned otherwise if they would not have this background. It's quite intriguing to consider why professionals found it much more difficult to consider success. We haven't got the time to do it right now, but this can be your homework if you want. I would like to give just one more example. This is from a research project in 5 countries on empowering women and providers, where women came with the experience of domestic violence, of intimate partner, as well as having identified mental health problems. And what we try to do in the project is literally to empower them through an educational program and then through a program of providing them skills to become co-facilitators. We also worked with mental health providers, and what we tried there is to give them the skills to identify domestic violence even when it's not disclosed, to enable women to feel that they can talk about it, and then not always to refer them to specialist services because their mental health problems remain. So not to be afraid of working with them and showing them how to do that type of work. And I just want to give an example of what success implied in this particular project. Women who were afraid that they will be hurt again, physically, emotionally, who nevertheless managed to accept that they were not guilty of being abused by their partners. This sounds paradoxical because we are all aware that they were victims of violence, but in fact the culture in which we live, all of us in those 5 European countries, does actually have a tinge of telling women, you are responsible for intimate relationship, and if they don't work, it's your fault. So reduction in the sense of guilt was a major success for this group. Quite a number of the women in the groups have also started to dare and have dreams and ambitions, not only to be free of violence, but to take a driving license successfully, enter courses in the Open University, become trainers for the police, talking to social work students. And allowing their children to express anger was a huge success. The ability to recognize that the experience of domestic violence was harrowing for the children as well, and they may rightly feel anger at their parent, and to be able to allow the children to do that, to find also the right response for the children, sometime in the form of psychotherapy, sometime in discussions, many other ways, has been a huge success. So these are examples of perhaps unexpected successes. Sorry. So what does success lead to? Self-esteem and increase in self-esteem and confidence, and appreciation of key layers in our lives, as I gave in those examples. It does motivate us to strive to achieve more, and it leads to a new appreciation by our peers and by our managers of what we can achieve against the odds. There are methods of learning from success, retrospectively, prospectively, by learning from a learning question to a quest for learning, how to solve a particular problem in a successful way. And thirdly, learning on learning, not leaning as is written here by mistake, introducing ongoing learning, which is very much in demand, both in organizations and in people's individual life. So the question is how we can use those methods to support learning in the recovery journey. Another issue that comes up is quite often people argue, if you will focus on success, you will forget about the risks. And if you forget to avoid risk, this will be the end of both your professional career as well as damaging for the individuals who you're working with. And therefore, perhaps the focus of success will hide the risk. Perhaps it could reduce the risk, or could it prevent the risk from developing? I think all of those three options can take place. But if we accept that there is nothing like success to motivate people to meet a challenge, then risk will be identified in mapping barriers and facilitators to any planned success. Sorry. I see. Okay. I did have a slide about learning facilitator to success, but we can start with the barriers. The barriers are the opposite of success, which means reduction in self-confidence, little self-esteem, and lack of confidence by others in our ability. The fear of failure is quite often a barrier to trying to take on a challenge. And of course, it comes with a fear of the challenge itself. Success, like any other transition, may also mean some losses. Moving to a new place where we do not know people, taking on more responsibilities or new responsibilities, and sometimes we may fail. And accepting the value of the right to fail is actually a key to success, not only to failure. The facilitators of success are any opportunities that we have to increase our self-confidence and esteem. This is where others are very important. It's not only the belief of ourselves in our abilities, but it's the belief of at least one significant other, that the recovery approach, the new meaning of recovery, speaks about, and which has been validated in study after study. So mentors have been found as very important people in learning how to succeed. And there are quite a number of projects of, for example, a project that I'm very well aware of students in universities who have specific learning difficulties, like dyslexia. And the mentors who show them how they can succeed, how they can learn from whatever they're doing towards a greater success. Finally, I would like to remind us that we can also, and we should, research success. Some people would say she will say it because she's responsible for the research module. But yes, I am responsible for the research module, and I'm a great believer in the value of research evidence. So, when we research success, we have to remember it is in the eye of the beholder, not just a person who tries to reach success, but also the others around them. So we need to look always at more than one perspective of a specific success to get an intersubjective view. There is a place for subjective view, but there is also a place for an intersubjective one. And multi-perspectives may also indicate disagreement and favoring a particular aspect of the success. The significance of the success for the main actor, for the area and time in their lives, for the particular issue, is also very important. Inquiring what and who has enabled the success to take place is an integral part of what we would research in looking at success. And while it is possible to quantify the success along different dimensions, qualitative research approach is more helpful in researching success. There's a huge variety of creative qualitative methods that I'm not going to go into, but which I hope you will experience when you come to our course. Thank you very much for listening, and do let me know if you have any questions.
We'd like to thank you all for coming and staying. If there's any questions, if you'd like to type them in now, we'll happily field any questions that you've got. Otherwise, you've probably seen my email around somewhere. It's a.kempson, Kempson, at hearts, herts.ac.uk. So if you've got any questions about the course or anything else after this, then do feel free to drop me a line. And we will put the presentations up onto the RAISE website, and we'll be using them as course materials in the future as well.